But with that being said, really excited to be with you all tonight. My name is Hayden Ron. For those who I don't know, I see a lot of familiar names, and I'm excited to see a lot of familiar names. I'm a 2016 University of Oregon graduate. I am a former Delta Upsilon headquarters staff member. I spent 5.5 years on staff. I left staff back at the end of January, and in my time there, I served in roles from leadership consultant and ended up as the director of growth or chapter development and growth. So for those who participated in Amplify DU last summer, you know me really well because I was the one sending all the emails on all the webinars, all that good stuff. So really excited to be provided the opportunity to be here with you all tonight. Currently, I serve as the Assistant Director of Alumni Engagement at Oregon Health and Science University up here in Portland, Oregon. So still in the realm of recruitment a little bit, but more so engagement when it comes to alumni. But if any chance I can get to talk about recruitment and give back to the fraternity as a volunteer, sign me up for it. And so really excited to be sharing my knowledge with you all, answering you all's questions, all of those pieces there. Couple quick housekeeping things before we dive into the session. One, as a reminder, if you could please make sure that you put your name and chapter in the chat box. So Chuck, our leadership consultant, can go ahead and mark you as attended or your chapter as attended. Any questions that you have, please make sure to put that in either the chat box or the Q&A box. So I think there's a Q&A box, if I'm not mistaken. Chuck and John will be monitoring that. We'll try to get to all the questions either throughout or definitely at the end of the webinar. So you can put those in there and they'll make note of it, or you can wait to the very end to answer any questions that you have. And then the last thing, if you could make sure that you are on mute, so we limit the background noise, that is much appreciated as well. So second webinar, just so you all know, things got switched. So if you're expecting the DEI webinar, that got switched to next week since our partners needed to switch that date. And so we just moved this webinar up a week. And so that, if there's any confusion there, is what's going on. And so today we are going to talk about recruitment as a team effort. How is this the blueprint for success or for a successful recruitment? And so, as you all probably know, or you've probably heard, or you've probably thought or have seen, recruitment is not a one-person show. It's not a one-man show. It's not myself doing it all. It's not John doing it all. It's not Chuck doing it all. It's not Dominic doing it all. It really, really is a team effort. And any successful recruiting chapter will tell you that. And when I say team effort, it also goes beyond just your recruitment team. When I say team effort, it is an entire chapter-wide effort. Everybody plays a vital role in recruitment. Everyone plays a vital role in bringing in quality individuals and helping them make sure they understand the DU principles and values and experience. And so tonight we're really going to talk about what does that look like for you all as you head recruitment up. How can I be successful, and what do I need to keep in mind, and what do I need to be doing in order to be successful with the entire team, in this case, the entire chapter. So 2 questions we're going to answer tonight, or I hope we will, or I hope you'll have more clarity on them. One, how can everyone in your chapter play a vital role in recruitment? Again, this is actually a thing. Everyone has a vital role. And so we'll talk a little bit about that. And why is this important, right? So we're going to dive into why is it important that everyone plays a vital role, right? You may think, hey, why don't we just have myself and our recruitment team play those roles and recruit our goal number and we'll be fine. There are reasons why that isn't the most successful way of having a recruitment set up. And so here we're going to dive into why is that important that everyone plays that vital role. And we're going to explore 3 different areas, right? So we're going to explore really what leads up to recruitment, what happens during recruitment, and what happens after recruitment. And so we feel as though if we can really dive in and understand the role that each person can play in those 3 different areas, you all will be able to be set up for success. The first one is referrals. So it's no secret that in order for us to even recruit anyone, we have to have referrals, or we have to have names of guys to recruit. And so referrals play a huge, huge role in how successful we are in recruitment. It plays a huge, huge role in the vital role that everyone plays when it comes to being successful. And so there's three big things that I really want to stress here when it comes to referrals. One, it's understanding the 10-to-1 ratio. What that means is for every 10 guys that you have on a names list, for every 10 referrals you get, one guy is going to be at about a 90 to 100% level of wanting to join and the type of individual that you want to join your chapter. So this means that if my chapter is going to have a goal of recruiting 15 guys this fall, I need to make sure that at the bare minimum, I have at least 150 to 200 names on my names list as referrals. I can't have only 30 guys. I can't only have 45 guys. And here's the reason why. One, it provides a larger pool, right? I'm finding more individuals that I can talk to. I have a greater chance of achieving my goal number, but I also have a greater chance of achieving my goal number with the quality of individuals that we should be looking for within DU. So if I have 45 guys on my names list and my goal is to have 15, what happens if I don't have 15 quality individuals there? Yeah, the right answer would be I'm not going to necessarily sacrifice and just give out bids because we want to reach the goal. But what we need to do is increase our names list, increase our referral list so that then I can say, okay, out of these 200 names, I'm probably going to be able to find 15 really quality men who are going to make an impact within my chapter. So something I commonly saw during my time on staff and still do as a volunteer is that chapters constantly are saying, yes, recruitment's going well. We got a good names list. We're going to get 10 guys. And when you ask for their names list, they have about 30, right? And so then the conversation needs to happen of, okay, where else are your referrals coming from? How do we add to that list? On the flip side, I also see chapters who go, yeah, we're actually looking for 30 and our referral sources are coming in constantly from members and our names list is 300, 400, 500 guys and they end up reaching their goal, sometimes exceeding it. And so it's really, really important that you all, as the leaders of recruitment for your chapters, really focus on how do I increase those referrals and how do I increase that names list. And that is where members come in, right? I was talking to John and Chuck, they're two leadership consultants on staff. Some of you may have met them at LI, some of you may know them from your chapters or just through your experience as an undergraduate. But what I was talking to them about prior to us getting on this webinar is the fact that at Wichita State where John went, or Elon where Chuck went, or Oregon where I went, I don't know everyone who knows everyone within the chapter, right? My referral source or my friend group or interested guys only stems so far. And so we need to really tap into our members to say, who do you know? What clubs are you in? That you're going to be able to share about DU, or you can pull guys into being interested or bringing them to a recruitment event. Who are friends of friends? Are we asking our friends who are in sororities or just friends who aren't in Greek life at all, saying, hey, who do you know? You clearly know the type of individual we're looking for. Do you have anyone that you would recommend? Hey, is your brother coming to school next year? Think about high school, right? Like, where is that? Where can we bring in individuals from our hometown onto our referral list? So if we are just worried about what the IFC provides us, or we're just worried about who we necessarily know firsthand, but not asking who else do you know, then our referral source and referral list can become very limited. But if we're expanding our search to the entire chapter and we're having very intentional conversations about how we add names list, why is it important to add names to a names list? Why is it important that guys provide referrals? Then you're going to increase that names list. You're going to increase the amount of guys that you could potentially be talking to, reaching out to, all of the above. This is also just a great place for some guys who are, man, I'm just really busy, right? We all have those guys in the chapter, and they may be, right, or they may be not necessarily comfortable going to events, but they may say, hey, I have a handful of guys I can refer you to, I can get you in touch with, all of those pieces. And so this is where that team effort piece plays a big role. So if we're just relying on you as the VP of recruitment and your recruitment committee and the IFC to provide you referral sources, and we're not expanding that to the entire chapter, then you all are not doing the job that you can do to get those names and get those referrals. Another big one is tabling. So making sure that you're at, if your IFC has an IFC tabling kind of kickoff, make sure you're there. If your campus has a student organization tabling, most of them do like a club fair that they allow for you to table at the beginning of the fall. Do that. Most fraternities don't, or most, fraternity and sorority life chapters don't. And I've seen it work really well for groups who just say, yeah, we're going to get a table, and then we're just going to talk to as many guys as possible during that event. So those are just some pieces there that other places where you can find referral sources. And with tabling, for example, that's where you can bring in other individuals from your chapter to make sure that the table is staffed. Maybe they stop by the table, they're having lunch at the table, they're meeting guys, all of these things that are going to increase that names list and referral source list. And then the last piece when it comes to referrals is knowing how to best approach P&Ms, right? So being intentionally identifying who is the best member to connect with a P&M, right? So if I am the VP of recruitment and I'm from Southern California and I went to school in Eugene, Oregon, and I have a chapter member who is from Kansas, and I know that John is coming through recruitment and he's going to show up at my event, I need to be intentional that I'm going to connect John with the member from Kansas so that they can make that connection and identifying who that member is, right? Or if I know that this member has is a huge sports fan, right? Like all he talks about is football, or all he talks about is basketball or baseball, and I know that I have a PNM who's coming to an event, or I've spoken to a PNM who really talks about sports and loves it just as much as Chuck does. I need to make sure I'm intentional enough to identifying how do I connect that P&M with my member. Again, you yourself and your recruitment committee are not going to be the best person necessarily to have the best connection with the P&M. Doesn't mean you won't connect with them, doesn't mean you won't build a relationship, but there are other members in the chapter, depending on background and interest and all of those pieces, that you can be intentional enough to identify how do I connect this P&M with that. And so that can play another vital role with members, right? It's as simple as connecting them in an event. It's as simple as taking them to lunch with that individual, to dinner, to coffee, studying with that individual. So we just need to start thinking about who are those members, what is the P&M interest, how can I connect them with people, and start being that facilitator with those relationships. All right, so that is the referral piece. The next piece is the recruitment experience. And so I think that this is a huge place where you see chapters be really successful when it comes to creating environments that the whole chapter can play a role in. So the first thing that we have to keep in mind is our recruitment experience should pretty much mirror our chapter experience. And what I mean by that is if Boise State's going out during recruitment and they're playing paintball, they're doing go-karts, the whitewater rafting, they're doing all of these things. And then the recruitment experience, that's the recruitment experience, but the chapter experience is they do none of that, right? Or our members are acting a certain way during recruitment and they're not doing that during the chapter experience. That can be really detrimental to retention of members, or really detrimental to somebody's experience of like, wait a minute, I thought I was getting this, but I received something else. And so we need to be just very intentional. Doesn't mean you can't add in a whitewater trip or can't add in something like that, but it really just means that you want to make sure that that recruitment experience does mirror the chapter experience, so that transition into becoming a member or an associate member is fairly smooth, and your members play a vital role in that, right? So they're the ones who are sharing their experience. They're the ones who are showing up. They're the ones who are having the presence during the recruitment experience. That should be the same presence when that member accepts their bid and becomes an associate member, and ideally then an initiated member of the organization. Number two is we need to focus on how P&Ms feel during the process and the relationships they build with members. And what I mean by this is we really want to make sure that P&Ms feel like they belong, feel like they could see themselves a part of the organization, feel like they have those authentic and genuine connections with not just one or two guys, but with a handful of individuals, if not everyone within the chapter, right? And so what I've seen in the past is a PNM may have a really strong connection with the VP of recruitment or somebody on the recruitment committee, but they really haven't felt that connection with other individuals in the chapter, right? For whatever reason, that might be. A lot of the time it's those other individuals just haven't had the opportunity to connect with that PNM. And so that's where your all's job is to make sure, hey, let's make sure that you are meeting as many guys as possible, have as many connections as possible, that those connections are genuine and authentic, and that you feel as though that you could be here and that you belong within this chapter. And so that is going to push you to the next level when it comes to a P&M looking at you and saying, yeah, I want to join DU over another organization because I feel so connected to not just Hayden, the VP of recruitment, not just Chuck and John on the recruitment committee, but all these general members who, when they see me on campus, they say hi. They've invited me to dinner. They've done lunch together. I see them studying and they invite me over. They're texting me about fantasy football, right? Like those are the pieces that are going to make a P&M feel really welcomed and like they belong. And that happens when chapter members have that role and understanding they play a vital role in making P&Ms feel that during that process and during the relationships that they're building. So that transitions really into point 3, which is where recruitment events should not just be the only thing you do, but you rather need a combination of formal and informal events. Now, I know on some campuses that can be a little tough, so I will acknowledge that. I know there's rules with IFCs and all of those pieces, and I encourage you, if you're in that situation, to talk to your recruitment coach about how do we navigate those pieces there. But for the most part, groups can have formal events, they can have informal events, and that's where you need to have that balance, right? And this is where members can play a really important role, right? There's some guys who are really good in the informal setting, and we need to identify them quickly. We need to identify the guys who, man, I want to go to dinner with him because he's just going to be engaging with the potential new member. I want to go to the rec with him because he's going to be engaging. He's really going to build that relationship. I want to go study. I want to go do all of these things. Right. And then we also know there's the individuals who are really good at the formal stuff. Right. This is an event from 5 to 7 and he can work the room and do XYZ and he can kind of go from group to group and build relationships and make connections. And so in your thought process as the VP of recruitment, you need to be thinking about, okay, who are these guys that are really good in this formal setting? Who are they the same guys as the informal setting? Who are the guys that I could be taken out to dinner and make sure that they have those really good conversations? That's really, really important throughout the recruitment process, because the way an individual successfully is recruited is not the Monday through Friday 5 to 7 recruitment event. It's the Monday through Friday 5 to 7 recruitment event. It's the text afterwards. It's the, hey, you want to go grab lunch tomorrow? Hey, we're going to the gym. Hey, did you see this thing that just happened with whatever sports team they may be a fan of? So it's all of those little informal things. And going back to this idea that it's not just on you, that can't just be on you, right? So you need to empower the rest of the chapter to have those conversations, to do those things, to create those opportunities for individuals to have the informal activities or the conversations that are really going to, again, take your recruitment to the next level and be the difference maker when it comes to, why am I going to accept a bid from DU over somebody else? It's, well, these guys were really on top of and really cared for me, and we were doing things that weren't just Taco Tuesday and Wing Wednesday. It was, we did Taco Tuesday and that was super fun, and then we went and got ice cream after, and then the next day we grabbed lunch, and man, like, this is great, right? And I did it with, and I met 20 different guys throughout the process, and I really am just feeling this out, and I'm really feeling a good connection with DU. So those are the thought processes that you need, and that's how the entire chapter can be involved in that. And then the last piece is establish roles for every member of the chapter. A lot of the times guys don't know what to do with recruitment, and it doesn't mean that they don't want to recruit. It's, they just don't know where they fit in. And so this is where, if you haven't already, you should plan at least a half day or an hour-long retreat if you don't have a half day, or a couple hours to really go through, okay, what are the best practices with recruitment? How are we being smart with this? And what's everyone's role, right? So my role as the VP of recruitment is this. Your role as a recruitment committee member is this. Your role as a general member is XYZ, right? For some people, it's, I just really need you to show up to the event, right? I need you to show up and make connections, and that's that, right? For other individuals, it's, I need you to show up and I need you to be open to going out to dinner or lunch or doing some of these other informal things. Awesome. For others on your recruitment committee, it's, hey, I really need you to help me delegate and find the logistics and figure everything out. And so what that does is it provides clarity on every person's role and responsibility within the chapter. If we just say, all right, guys, recruitment's coming up, we need you out to the event. Yeah, guys might show up, guys might not show up, right? But if we're very, very intentional about saying why it's important to show up, what's your role, what do I need from you, and having those very intentional conversations, it changes the game. I've seen it change the game for groups who weren't doing that, and then they decided, hey, this is what we need to do. And there was just a different vibe and a different feeling around recruitment, which led them to be successful, reach their goals, or at least be closer to where they want to be at when it comes to recruitment. All right, so that's referrals. That's the recruitment experience. And then the last piece is retention. So what people often fail to realize is I can recruit really well during a 2-week period or during a formal period or whatever the case is. But if I don't retain these members, then I really didn't add members into my chapter, right? I may have added them for 8 weeks, but if they're not going through the entire process and if we're not retaining them to become impactful members of the chapter, then as the bottom or last point says, it's low quality recruitment, right? So if I have a low retention, it means I had a low quality recruitment because I may have recruited 20 guys, but if I only initiated 8, there needs to be a conversation about why that happened and the fact that we just didn't fulfill our obligation or our responsibility to get those guys during recruitment into initiated members. So always think through that recruitment doesn't end when guys have signed their bids. It's how do we continue that process all the way through so that we can get them initiated into the chapter and they can start making those impacts as members of DU on your different campuses. So I think the 3 other pieces here is you got to continue the experience beyond the recruitment process, right? So if you aren't continuing to make what will then be associate members feel this sense of belonging, feel this sense of support and growth, and creating that atmosphere, then they're going to start questioning, okay, should I be doing this, or is this the right thing for me? Other things are going to start creeping in. And so the most successful groups I've seen is, man, we're done with recruitment and we're jumping right into making these guys have a great associate member experience that's very similar to their recruitment experience, that's going to create this great atmosphere that guys are going to be excited for. And so we're really focusing on retaining those guys. It's part of why Amplify DU goals include 80% retention, because we want to make sure that you're not just focusing on recruiting 40 guys, but only retaining 10 of them. We want to make sure you're focusing on recruiting 40 guys and retaining ideally 40 of them, but we also understand that some guys just can't get initiated for a lot of different reasons. So we want to make sure that it's, hey, 30, 35 guys. And so that's really, really important through this process. And the chapter creates that also, right? It's not the sole responsibility of the VP of recruitment. It's not the sole responsibility of the VP of member ed or associate member educator or other exec board members. This is really where you see the entire chapter create that experience, right? How do they feel in chapter meetings? How do they feel when they're trying to figure out who their big brother is going to be? How do they feel when they get put on a committee, and how are they interacting with those guys, right? How do they feel? Do they feel like, oh, those guys don't invite me to things, or I can't participate, or I'm feeling a little off? We need to make sure we're intentional about not making that happen so that those guys have a great experience from the moment that they came to their first recruitment event to the moment that they sign the roll book and become an initiated member. And so that, again, that takes an entire team-wide effort in doing that, because what you don't want is a guy to say, you know what, Chuck, I had a great recruitment experience. I'm just not feeling it anymore. I feel like I'm really only connecting with you and John. I wish I was connecting better with everyone in the chapter. I just think I can't go through with this, right? That's going to hurt, right? That stings when somebody says that, especially when it's somebody that you were super excited for and had a really good positive recruitment experience. On the flip side, you want me to look at Chuck and John and say, man, I'm so excited to be initiated. I've met even more guys in the chapter. I feel like I really belong here. I feel really supported. I feel like I've grown here. I wasn't expecting, I was expecting that going through the recruitment process, but you've really created this atmosphere and this experience for me. Man, I can't wait until December 11th when we're getting initiated, right? And so that's created by the chapter, not just by John and Chuck, right? John and Chuck maybe are facilitating that and helping that as the VP of member ed or as another executive board member, but it's really the chapter that's creating that for you all. All right. So with all of that being said, I know that was a lot of information. I want to take some time to where you don't have to listen to me for a little bit. What I would love for us to do now is I have 3 questions for you all that I would love to hear about and kind of get your guys' thoughts within the chat. So if you all don't mind, what we're going to do here is we're just going to go question by question and would love to get your thoughts. You can either come off mute or you can put it in the chat to get your thoughts and feedback. So the first one I'd love to hear from you guys about is thinking about the referral source and how important that is. What have been successful referral sources that your chapter and your members has seen, or how do you encourage your members to provide referrals for recruitment?
Well, I can go real quick. Something that we do and we're trying to continue to do at Christopher Newport is get people to, obviously, when we look at IFC stuff, that's one thing. But like you said, with clubs, making sure that all of our members who are involved in a bunch of different things are actually tapping into those resources and making sure that they know different people and they're connected to them. So if we have, let's say currently we have 18 members, let's say each person is in a different club outside of that and they know 2 people that they can talk to, that's 36 right there. So we want to make sure we're using that as a primary source, but using that to go further and just actually being, like you said, being intentional and actually talking with people.
Awesome. Yeah, that's a great point there with what Christopher Newport's doing. It's how is everyone providing those referrals, and it's a great point where 18 can become 36 or 32 or however many super quick if everyone is bought in to providing those referrals and thinking about that and being intentional about that. So appreciate you sharing. What else? What are other chapters seen be successful, or encouragement, or maybe even I've thought about this is something that we could do?
Something that my chapter does is we have these things called Aztec nights, which they differ. They can be for sophomores, juniors, but at the beginning of the year, they're mainly for people who are just coming into the school. And it's for anybody to attend, anybody can go. So we tend to go there and just talk to people and talk about our fraternity and invite them out to dinner or invite them over to the chapter house just to hang out, whatever the case be.
Yeah, definitely. Right. Like James is talking about this idea that there are these events that happen every start of the fall that are going to have so many potential individuals there that you all need to take advantage of that. Right. So it's going to these kickoff events, it's tabling at these events, or even it's just going and meeting guys, right, and interacting and saying, here's my number, right, or let's go grab lunch or do something, right, or I'm with DU, like if we can help in any way. Like those are such important things that you and chapter members can do to be successful and find more referrals. I just opened the chat and I see a couple really good pieces here. Clubs have been pretty good, definitely at Seton Hall. Those can be a huge referral source. I think people don't always think of it that way, or they don't want to, cause any issues with clubs. But if you do it in the right way, it can definitely be helpful there. Friends of friends, meeting P&Ms at social areas around campus, definitely like thinking about where our potential members going to be at Oregon. Right before school started, we just all got together at one of our houses and we just walked into the residence hall dining areas and just started meeting guys with our recruitment shirts on and passing out flyers and telling them about our recruitment events. We knew that was going to be a huge point for us, and it definitely worked when I was the VP of recruitment. Brody at Tennessee, yeah, large referral point of us is connection with Panhellenic community and on campus. So yes, sorority members have close friends and they are a good judge of character and they know who they want to be within the organization, right? So we do that a lot with expansion, and so definitely a place where you can find a lot of good names. Caden, yes, 2026 Instagrams. If your campus has them, utilize them. Send out those personalized DMs through Instagram, through social media. That was a huge thing when COVID hit. We talked about that all the time. The other piece, I can't remember, it was at Last LI, so LI in New Orleans. There was a group who would go see who was liking other fraternities' posts and saying, okay, pretty much like if they're interested in fraternity, they're liking that post, and then we're going to message them, right? So they kind of found this cool way of seeing if they're liking X fraternity's post and it's clear that they may be a freshman, we should put them on our list and shoot them a DM as well, because they may be interested in fraternity overall. Boise State members have lots of referrals and have been good guys that meet our standards. IFC list, helping guys move into the dorms. Yes, guys, if you have the opportunity of doing it, please have members sign up to help guys move into the dorms. Why? One, it's easy connection and you're talking with them and you're helping them. Two, you can meet the parents and they can have a good conversation there, right? Like parents have a lot of influence over decisions of their kids. And so if you have a good relationship with the parentals, that can be super helpful, right? Plus you don't have to put in the work necessarily to get their names. You have to put in the work to help move them in, but they're right there for you. And then you can meet one guy moving into the dorm, and then you got the whole hall of guys who you can go interact with as well after the fact. Referrals from teachers is what we tend to go off of. Yeah, that's another great one, right? So like academic list, if we want to make sure if there's like an honors or a dean's list that we can get a hold of, that's great as well. Teachers have a lot of names or people that they can think of. And then Kyle from Miami. Yeah, we have a lot of guys that TA and have gotten numbers through PNMs. Yeah, I've seen that on campuses, right? So they're a TA and they know guys in classes and they build a good relationship in the classroom, and that translates over really well. We also encourage PNMs on our list to bring friends and roommates. Yes, if you're not telling PNMs, bring your friends, bring your roommates, and you're making the assumption that they will, you're doing it wrong. Hey, we're going to have this event. Bring your friends along. Bring your roommate along. Who are your roommates? Do you have their number? All of those pieces there as well. We also have a master list of PNMs that's open to all brothers to add notes. Yep. So that's definitely something that should happen there. I think going back to the PNMs, like bring roommates, bring friends. I think another key piece, and this is not only for you as the VPs of recruitment, but it's also for all of the chapter members, is don't rely on the PNM to be doing the work for you. So if they do have a friend, get their contact information and don't just rely on that PNM to be sending the text and inviting that person along. Hey, I know you got a roommate. If they show up to the event, make sure you get his number so that you can then personally reach out to him and not have to go through the PNM or his other roommate who brought him along. And now you're kind of in charge of what that conversation looks like and what's happening there. Awesome, guys. Good stuff. Next one. How does your chapter ensure PNMs have a positive feeling throughout the DU recruitment and relationship building process? This is hugely important. What does that look like? Bo, always introduce them to new members and check up on them. Yeah. So the amount of times I have been somewhere and guys have said, man, I just appreciate you checking in on me, even if it's not like recruitment related, even if you remember that I had a test on Friday and on Saturday you texted me, asked me how the test was. That goes a long way. It means that you actually heard them, you actually cared, and you built that relationship there. So that's a great point, Bo. Building relationships with people on common interests, setting up fun events to create good experiences for them, introducing successful alumni and tools. Yeah, so San Jose, I know you guys, I've worked with your chapter before. You use alumni in a really, really cool and productive way, which I've always appreciated. And yeah, what are the common interests of individuals and how do we get them to be in that space with other individuals? And that's where a lot of the informal stuff happens, right? So it's hard to have these formal events where everyone's going to be interested in, right? It just can't always happen that way. But at those events, if you are finding out common interest, make sure you capitalize on that in the informal process, right? So it's not like I can necessarily go to like a Kanye concert for a formal event, but if somebody's like, hey, I like Kanye, and somebody else likes Kanye, like, hey, let's make that connection and do something about it. Or, hey, have you heard this new song? Or what are your thoughts on this? It makes that connection so much easier and feels like they're connecting. Showing the brotherhood, not just telling them about it. I love it, Josh, right? Like everyone, and you all may have experienced this going through recruitment. You go through recruitment. What does every chapter say? Man, we're all about brotherhood, right? Like, great, I can find brotherhood anywhere in an IFC group. But if I'm not showing them what that means in DU land, then I'm not really doing a good job. Just telling them that we have brotherhood is different than, hey, I've got to show them what that actually means. And that's introducing them to people. That's talking about your experience. That's doing all of these things that are showing them what true brotherhood is like. Anything else from guys before we move on to this question to this question before we move on to question 3?
I think I would just add like something about in my past experience. I think going off of the point about showing the brotherhood and not just telling them. I think something that helped my chapter, and especially during the pandemics, we've, in terms of being authentic, my chapter, we like to have a little banter back and forth between guys. And I think, being able to kind of have some of that within certain conversations, to keep it to a certain, extent, but it just kind of shows new members that are like looking at the members you already have, that that these guys are authentically friends and
Yeah.
get along with each other.
Yeah. Great point, Chuck. Definitely. All right, guys, last one before we move on. What are best practices when it comes to retaining our associate members? So what are we doing to ensure that the guys that we're recruiting are being retained throughout the process? What do we see at different chapters or thoughts that you all have?
I'll go ahead and kick off this one, Hayden, actually. I've been kind of thinking this over. Kathy's right. First, always got to gas out Kathy, my old advisor. Good to see you. We're talking about genuine interactions as far as retaining associate members. Something that I've done at a lot of these educational sessions surrounding recruitment, membership education, and retention is the exercise of why did you join your organization versus why did you stay? And so when we're talking about being genuine and showing them the real experience, and most of my experiences, connection is the number one reason that members stay. So if we're giving them those authentic connections and not just kind of a fabricated event that's not really going to be the norm, I think that really is the first step, is just being transparent about what the organization is going to be doing throughout the year.
Definitely. Yes, John, totally 100% on Kathy's comment as well. You've got to be transparent. You've got to be transparent about cost, time commitment, academic requirements, all of these things that can get lost in the world of recruitment because we're so focused on, I just want the number, or I want this guy, but we have to have that conversation about how much time is this going to take, how much is this going to cost for me, because you see it all the time where guys join and they're so excited and they're like, oh, wait a minute, I can't pay this, or I didn't know about this cost because it was never talked about. I think, John, as you were talking, Caden from San Jose State made that connection about making connections, right? Yes, you want to make sure that get them involved. Aiden said it, get them involved ASAP and get them involved with connections that are going to help them moving forward, right? Have them have some stake in the game, right? So put them on committees, make sure that they're having an active role in conversations when it comes to chapter meetings, like these things that are going to allow for individuals to feel, wow, I'm heard, I feel part of this, I have that connection, is so important post recruitment once you all start getting into kind of that chapter experience and role. Akash, good to see you, man. I haven't seen you in a while. For us personally, tailoring recruitment conversations according to the person and their interests have worked better. So I think, it's that fine line of how do I make sure that we are talking about kind of who we are as an organization, but also tailoring those conversations to the individual. So there's definitely that balance there. Clay at Boise State doing more than one invite only event. So having PNMs go through more voting processes rather than just giving them a bid too fast. Yeah, you see this a lot, right? Where groups are like, again, this is another balance piece where I met this guy for 10 minutes and I'm just going to give him a bid, and we didn't really get to know him in the way that we should have. And next thing you know, he's probably not the best member for the organization. Now, I will say I've seen groups whose process is too slow. So you don't need all of these pieces there, and they've missed out on some really great guys because they just took way too long. So you really have to find the balance of how are we interacting with this guy? Who is he meeting? What's our process? And yeah, we can't just be handing out bid and then a bid and then a bid because we talked to him for 5 minutes and he was a chill guy, right? It is really, how is this guy going to make an impact? How does he live the values? All of those pieces. I think to Clay's point as well, something that John, Chuck, and I talked about before this is this idea that some chapters have this idea of like, well, I'm just going to go bid 60 guys. I'm going to get 40 of them and we're only going to initiate 20. That's like, don't do that, please. For the sake of yourself, one, you're not being diligent and intentional about your process. And for the sake of the guys that you are already going in saying, hey, we're just going to get rid of you throughout our associate member process, because they could have found a better fit somewhere else. So please make sure that you are being respectful of that. I don't think a lot of groups do that, or any groups that I know of when I left was doing that. But I do know I've had conversations with chapters who are like, oh, that sounds like a cool idea. We will push back as coaches of saying, don't do that. And there's a lot of different reasons for that. Randy from Arlington, being consistent, always reaching out, inviting them, show them that you have interest. Yep. So you don't want them to join as associate members, and then all of a sudden the communication is just from like the VP of member ed, and they don't hear from anyone else. So make sure that they're invited to stuff and they're being involved within chapter activities. Connor from Kent State, having brotherhood events planned and properly marketing them, along with giving value added experiences. Yep. So you want to make sure you're doing stuff that's going to provide them experiences that they feel, hey, this is really valuable to me as a member of DU. Being intentional with our process, sharing our member education is working in tandem. I love that, Josh, right? Like, I think sometimes you see groups who are like, I got recruitment, and then they're not talking to their VP of member ed. And so then there's this disconnect, and the people who feel that the most are the associate members. And so making sure that your process is very seamless in that. And so if you haven't already done so, make sure you're talking to your VP of member ed about what's our recruitment process, what are we sharing, what can they expect, so that when they get handed over, more or less, the VP of member ed know exactly what's going on there. And John, yeah, to Connor's point, he is the chapter putting the same effort into brotherhood events it does in recruitment. I love that, right? So if you're putting all this effort in recruitment events because you want to get guys, but you're not putting that same effort in brotherhood events, guys are going to realize that very, very quickly. So making sure you're doing that all around. All right. Well, guys, I appreciate that. That was some awesome responses, and I love what you all are thinking about or what you've done in your chapters. I want to turn it over to you all and see what questions, if any, you all have for myself or even John and Chuck from the IHQ side about anything that we've covered today in the past 45 minutes. Again, you put it in the chat. Feel free to unmute yourself. I've done this long enough to know I haven't answered every question that you may have. Maybe I did, and I just like, I'm a rock star tonight. Don't think that was the case.
Here, Hayden, to give people a few extra seconds to come up with something if they need to. Chuck and I actually were at a Fired Up seminar earlier this summer. And for those of you who don't know what that is, it's a recruitment company for Greek life that does a lot of training at the international headquarters level all the way down to chapter and campuses. Something that they showed us was a non-Greek market results survey. And it talked about the percentage of non-Greeks and the reasons they didn't go Greek. 56% of the people that didn't join a fraternity or sorority in college that were polled, that were at least somewhat likely to join, 75% of that group said the number one reason they didn't join is just because they were never asked. Now, when asked if they received like a random cold text or a phone call, a lot of them did, but they didn't really recognize that as an actual warm invitation to check out the organization. Just a thought piece.
Right. Yeah, John, that's such a huge piece that you look at. There are people on your campuses who just need to be asked in the right intentional way. And so always think that, right? When you don't think that there's another individual who might be interested, think back to what John just said and go, yes, there's somebody out there on my campus. I just have to go put in the work to find them. Aiden had a question, and you all feel free to share. I know I've seen what chapters have done, but I want to hear from you all. What are some fun recruitment events that different chapters put on? So if anyone has, you can either put it in the chat, let Aiden know. This is something, I think, Aiden, great question, where this is something where we can definitely explore more, like in our small group settings with your coaches. But let's see if anyone has any thoughts to your questions tonight. Oh, spike ball tournaments. Yeah. You know what's great about spike ball, and this is something I learned really quick from a previous director of expansion at DU, Mark Gierke, who's now at Boise State. So our Boise State guys better take good care of him. And some of you may know Mark from AFLV, but what spike ball does really well, just like kickball, we had a kickball recruitment event that was a huge hit. One, because nobody has played kickball since 5th grade and everyone loves it. But what are you doing during spike ball when you're not playing? You're just kind of sitting around watching, hanging out. It gives so much time for conversation that it's such a good recruitment event. Plus it's fun for the guys who are there. Josh, Meet the Bros game night show. Definitely. Yep. You see that. Caden House barbecue. Yep. You're seeing like these opportunities to like have some fun connection while also providing space for conversation. I think that's a big piece to having a fun recruitment event is how do I just create space for like conversation? It doesn't feel so forced, right? It's like, well, if I just have this event where it feels very much like I'm trying to get to know you, but there's no other activity, then that's just not as fun. Football combine 7-on-7 tournament. Yes. Boise, I know that you guys done that before and it's been good. Sand volleyball, ultimate Frisbee. Yeah. So just being active, right? I think all of that's super fun. Like you don't have to overthink recruitment. I will tell people that all the time. Like what is just a fun thing that people like to do? One, because it creates a cool atmosphere and environment. And two, everyone's going, not everyone, but most people are going to want to show up to that, right? The other piece to it is if you are, yes, Rosie, and it's natural. The other piece for it too, real quick, and then we'll move on, is the fact that if you're just doing what everyone else is doing, it doesn't become fun, right? So if like if you're doing a Wing Wednesday event, because every other IFC chapter does a Wing Wednesday event, well, now it's just a matter of like which Wing Wednesday event do I attend? Where if you do a spike ball tournament or a football combine or a house barbecue, it could be a little bit more appealing because it's a little bit different than what other chapters are doing that day. Kyle from Miami, what do successful recruitment structures look like? Currently, we have a sort of informal committee of 2 guys we know can count on to help our 2 VPs, but have been wanting to establish a formal committee. Kyle, this is a great question. I'll answer it here, but I'm also going to encourage you to follow up with your recruitment coach because I think that's going to be a super helpful conversation for you. So I think the ideal recruitment committee is going to have the VP or the VPs of recruitment heading that, right? And then you're going to have your team. So you want to think of the guys who you know that are going to put in the work and can trust that they're going to get the job done. Typically, I think ideally you don't want the committee to be too huge because then that's a little overwhelming. I typically say, let's have the VP or VPs of recruitment up top and then probably 4 to 5 guys on that committee. And Kyle, the biggest thing about setting up a structured recruitment committee is ensuring that you're having weekly meetings. So I think a lot of the times recruitment committees are created. They have kind of this informal feel about it. Yeah, I'm a recruitment chair or I'm part of the recruitment committee. We text, we meet, we email, we do XYZ. We show up to like an IFC recruitment meeting, but they fail to have like every Wednesday at 7 p.m. we are going to meet and we're going to delegate roles and responsibilities. We're going to get an update on the names list. We're going to make sure that the guy who's in charge of social media is reporting out. So I think, Kyle, the best way to do that is essentially treat it like an executive board, right? So you create that committee, you have those guys, and then every guy has their responsibility so that you as the VP of recruitment can make sure you're checking in on them, right? And so it's like, well, if I know John's on my committee and I'm just like, all right, John, like you're on my committee, here's what we're tasked with. And I don't really have an idea and John doesn't have an idea of what he should be doing. It makes that follow-up really hard and it makes it really informal. But if I'm like, all right, John, you're on my recruitment committee, you're a recruitment chair. We meet every Wednesday at 7 p.m. and I am tasking you with the names list and the referral sources. So every Wednesday, I expect that you are going to have the names list updated. You're going to have a report on where we're at, what we need, who needs a bid, who needs to be reached out to. And I expect that every Wednesday, right? Well, now I know John knows what he needs to do, and I now can follow up with John in a more formal setting. So hopefully that helped kind of initially answer your question, Kyle. Like I said, feel free to either reach out to me or your recruitment coach to really talk through that a little bit more specifically when it comes to your chapter. But biggest thing is find those guys and then start setting up those weekly meetings to have that feel of it being formal and dividing up and delegating those jobs and responsibilities.
As
Real quick, Hayden.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
there you go, John.
Thanks. Kind of going off of Clayton's point from Boise State, something that I've seen be effective, like not even having guys in charge of specific events, but if you are in charge of a recruitment committee, having guys that are in charge of specific tasks at events. When I was VP of recruitment for my chapter, we had a couple chairs that their entire job was to help out the recruitment front on an operational scale. They were gonna like literally make sure we had ice to put with our waters. We had ketchup and mustard for hot dogs and hamburgers. And then we also had a group of other guys that were pretty much the social monitors of the evening too. Someone brought up earlier, making sure a P&M is engaged the entire time. We had guys whose job was if they saw a guest that was sitting alone, they went and talked to them. And so kind of assigning roles in a way where you have guys taking care of one facet of the recruitment event, that it can bring a lot of success too.
Definitely. Chuck, did you have something?
Yeah, I was just gonna give one quick tip based off of Kyle's question. In my experience, I found that having so our chapter house wasn't huge, and there wasn't really a good formal space in the house to host committee meetings. So for all of our committee meetings that would meet once a week, they were kind of like they had to reserve a classroom space, later at some time at night once all classes were done or whatever. But there was a system in place where you could reserve a classroom space through the university, and that in my experience, that helped a lot with the formal aspect, just because, then, VP of recruitment or whoever's leading the committee can, stand at the front of the room with the projector or the whiteboard or whatever. And it's just kind of really gives that, people sit at the desk and they are now, part of the committee, and they're paying attention, hopefully more than they would be at, sitting on the couch with a TV on in the background.
Yep. Or as Chuck, and we'll move forward from here, but or it limits distractions within the meeting, right? So you're not having guys come in and out, or something happens and now you're distracted and now you're getting off topic because something happened in that setting, where a classroom or a conference room on campus limits that. So, any other questions from guys or advisors? All right, so hearing none, did want to share just a couple reminders with everyone real quick. Really, this is about your coaching. So you all should have, or your chapter should have, received an email from your chapter coach on who they are. Every chapter who has signed up for Amplify, similar to last year, has been assigned a coach and a small group. You all will be meeting twice in the month of August with your small group, once next week, once the week after. So be on the lookout from your recruitment coach on setting that meeting up. Those are really intentional to ensure that you're having some peer-to-peer conversations with groups who are maybe with similar recruitment styles or similar campuses, all of those pieces. The other piece too is by the end of the month, you'll set up at least one-on-one session with your recruitment coach. You can do more. Encourage that for you all. If you need that assistance, the recruitment coach is really there to help you really dive into how do you be successful in that recruitment. Let them use their knowledge and expertise to help you out to be successful both in the fall or the spring or whenever your primary recruitment is. But as we know from our first webinar, recruitment is 365. So they can be really helpful in helping you understand where you're at in that process. And then last but not least, if you do have any questions or you want to talk through anything, here's my contact information. That's my Gmail. That's my phone number. I'm always happy to take a phone call, to answer a question, to take a meeting. It's something I dearly, dearly appreciated that I got to do during my time on staff, and something I thoroughly enjoy to do as a volunteer. So really just want to say thank you all for being here tonight, and some really, really great conversation within the chat, and really wish you all the best of luck as school starting for some of you, as recruitment is in the works for some of you. Please let us know how we can be of help and assistance, and we will see you all next week, same time on the 17th, and that will be our diversity, equity, and inclusion webinar. So thank you all. Have a good rest of your night, and please let me know how I can be of assistance.